Are you looking for a way to easily get list counts on your SharePoint sites? Meaning you want to know the total number of items in your lists and libraries for any given SharePoint site. You can, of course, get this information just by browsing through SharePoint, but what if I want to do something that's more along the lines of reporting, or I need to do trending to see that growth over time? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can execute a simple Power Automate workflow, connect that with the SharePoint list, and get visual output to see where those large and growing lists and libraries are in your SharePoint sites. So now let's get SharePoint smart. Okay, here I am in SharePoint Online, and I'm in my site where I'm going to go ahead and run my report. So as I mentioned, if I go to the site content screen, I can see some item counts. And that's useful if I'm just browsing, but that doesn't give me a way to do output or reporting from SharePoint. If I want to do something more automated where I can get some structured output and perhaps send reports or be able to view these trends over time, I'm going to need to do something more than just look at the site content screen. So let's look at the output first. I've got my list that I've created, and it's a very simple list. It's just using the default title field, and I added a number field called count. So I called my list counts report, and the concept is easy to understand. These are the total number of items in these various lists and libraries, sorted descending based on the total count in those. To demonstrate, I'm going to go ahead and delete these records so I can rerun the workflow, and we'll show just how efficient this workflow can be getting those counts for us. So I'm going to switch over to Power Automate, and let's go ahead and run this workflow. I want to show that this can run very quickly. So that's running right now. It should take about 40 seconds or so to run through that, and we'll see this list report screen start to fill up as it's doing the records. So you can see those populating, and I think in my particular SharePoint site I've got something like 40 different lists and libraries in here. So I can kind of refresh the screen and see it go. And what's nice about this is it's getting this information pretty quickly. Depends on your SharePoint site, but in my case, it's doing this about one list per second, so it's very efficient. And this stage it should be just about done. It took 38 seconds to run that workflow. And now we'll actually get into the workflow. And below the video, I'm going to include some snippets so that you guys can copy those where you need to. One thing I really like about this is how easy this is to set up. So here's my workflow. I'm over here in the Canvas interface for Power Automate. And of course, I do need to make sure that my user accounts can have full control access on the SharePoint site where I'm running this. I would recommend you're going to set up a recurring workflow. You can have this run at whatever frequency you want. Maybe this is something you want to run weekly or monthly. You could run it daily if you want to. It just depends on what your requirements are. So that part's pretty easy to understand. I won't go in the intricacies of the settings there. The next thing you're going to do is invoke this get all lists and libraries. If you do a search for different flow block options, you should be able to find that pretty easily. And that's going to return back a list from SharePoint of all the lists and libraries in the selected site. So no coding required there. I just pick from a drop-down picker and pick the site where I want to run the report. And what's great about this workflow is its versatility. So if I need to do this for other sites, it becomes easy. I just am only going to change that site address, and I can reuse this workflow in any SharePoint site that I want to. Okay, at that point, we're going to go in this apply to each loop, and we're going to use the body value parameter that's coming from get all lists and libraries. You can just pick that from the dynamic selector. No coding involved in that point either. And at this stage, we only have 2 more blocks to go. Now we do have to get into some code snippets now. And if you look below the below the video in the description, you're going to see, and you can just copy and paste those snippets because those are a little bit tricky, but I've got those ready to go for you. We want to get counts on each of the lists. Now, normally when we're getting SharePoint lists, we use the get items workflow, but that's resource intensive. It's expensive, if you will, in terms of the amount of time and activity that takes place, because it's actually returning back all of the information from the list. All that we need is the count, and we're going to use this send an HTTP request to SharePoint action, which is much more efficient. By calling the API, we can specifically tell it, we just need the total number of items. That's it. And this is what lets this workflow run so quickly. This URI that you're going to use, I'm going to have that in the description. You can just copy and paste that. And you do need to make sure it's exactly as referenced below the video. And this is going to dynamically get the count back for each of these lists that's returned by the above block. Okay, at this point, with the count and the list and library names in hand, we can go ahead and write those records back to SharePoint. And you're going to need a couple code snippets here as well. So you need to create this list. In my case, I called it list counts report. And as I mentioned, it's just going to use the default title field, which is in out-of-the-box SharePoint lists. And then you're going to have that one additional field called count. In those 2 fields, you're going to use a code snippet for both. So just reference below the video. The first one is a reference we used in the above block. This is the display name. This is actually going to return back the name of the SharePoint list. And then below that, we're going to make a reference which is going to be getting us an item count parameter from the send an HTTP request to SharePoint. So don't get too worried about how exactly those are put together. If you just copy and paste that, that's completely reusable on this workflow across, between environments and across any different SharePoint sites you want to use. So just copy and paste those in. That's it. That's everything that you need to be able to create this workflow in your environment. And as I say, you can set this to happen reoccurring if you wish. There's lots of possibilities from there. You could delete all the records to refresh the list. You could do different views depending on the frequency of the list. You could do grouping based on list name. Lots of different options in terms of what you're going to do with this data now that you have it. So let me go back to the report. Let's take a look. Another thing I did, I just used the column settings, format this column, and I used the data bar option just to make it look a little bit nicer. And I also sorted it to sending my count, because when you're running this kind of report, probably you're interested to see what are those bloated lists and libraries that are maybe growing really quickly, that type of thing. An additional option, which you may find interesting, you can actually do a full-blown chart. So I have a second view that I created, which is my list counts report. And of course, this looks a lot more visually appealing. This would be something I could print out and share, with management or part of a presentation, that type of thing. You can make that look however you want. This charting comes from SharePointDashboards.com, and this is my site. There are lots of charting templates in here. I just copied and pasted it from here. This charting template does require a paid subscription. However, there are 21 free templates that you can get access to if you sign up for the free account to begin using it. This is totally dynamic. You can make this chart look however you want. As you can tell, I can change the color options. I can change the scale. I can change the title. I can do anything I want in terms of the appearance of the chart. All of it's adjusted real time. I can get that preview. And then when I come back over to SharePoint, all that I have to do to set up that chart is just copy and paste. So if I go to format the view, I can just paste it in that code window, and boom, there's my chart. So it's a really cool additional tool that fits well with this type of report. Okay, that's it. That's all you need to know in order to do these item counts on SharePoint lists and libraries. There's a lot of interesting possibilities with this. I'm really interested in trending as it relates to charts. So this is just a single snapshot of time for right now. What are my counts right now? But if you think in terms of SharePoint site administration, maybe I'd like to see a trend over time. It would help me do things like track the total number of help requests that are coming in, projects that are created, total number of tasks. And by setting up this scheduled workflow, you can keep getting those snapshots. So over successive weeks and months, you can actually see trends in terms of how those lists and libraries grow. So you can identify where there's activity, and it might help in your SharePoint planning. So a lot of interesting things you can do with this workflow after it's set up. That's everything I wanted to show you. I hope you found it useful, and I wish you good luck.